Alrighty, YouTube Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back to another video. So I wanted to come on here and talk about this statistic. Brock Purdy is actually statistically the best deep thrower of the football in the entire NFL. Now, obviously, there's going to be people in the comments saying, well, Brock Purdy, is surrounded by a bunch of weapons, this and that. And I'm going to get into that later on. But first, I want to talk about these statistics and what is going in right now to Brock Purdy being the best deep thrower of the football. So against the Jaguars, of course, Brock Purdy threw the football beyond 20 yards 6 total times. He completed all of those 6 passes for 163 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he was credited for 2 big-time throws by Pro Football Focus. Now, on the season, all in all, Purdy has 37 pass attempts behind the line of scrimmage. He's thrown the ball over 20 yards 30 times. And even on plays where he ends up throwing the ball underneath, you can tell that Brock Purdy is hunting for that deep ball. So, and that's the thing I like about Brock Purdy. He is not afraid to air that football out. We've seen it, we've seen it this entire season with how Brock Purdy has not been scared of letting it rip downfield. And that's something that the 49ers have missed since probably Colin Kaepernick. Jimmy Garoppolo was never a consistent deep ball passer in the NFL when he was with the 49ers. And I think a lot of that had to do with Jimmy Garoppolo being an inaccurate passer and also with Jimmy Garoppolo not having the strongest of arms. And Brock Purdy doesn't have the strongest of arms either, but he definitely has a better arm than Jimmy Garoppolo does, and he's a more accurate passer of the football. So it also goes back to kind of proving that Kyle Shanahan has a lot of confidence in Brock Purdy letting the ball rip down the field. And it seems like Kyle Shanahan this year has really encouraged Brock Purdy to throw the football down the field. And obviously, when you have a West Coast offense, the formula is simple. You have a strong run game with a short to medium passing game. That run game will open up that play action. Like that's just what a West Coast offense is, through in and throughout. So it's good to see how the 49ers this season in particular are taking more shots down the field with Brock Purdy. And it's really paid off for them, clearly. But obviously, going back to what I said at the beginning of this video, critics are so quick to judge Brock Purdy of his surrounding weapons. And going, out of those 20 completions on those 30 pass attempts, 2 of those have been dropped. So when you look at that, it's 66% completion percentage, which is 6 points higher than the second quarterback in second place in that category. When you adjust for the drops, that number jumps to 73%. And he's also thrown the second most touchdown passes over 20 yards and has the second highest passer rating. And clearly, with Purdy's aggressiveness and willingness to push the ball down the field, the 49ers have the best passing offense in the entire NFL by a pretty comfortable margin. The only team kind of behind San Francisco right now is the Texans in passing with 47.9%. And then obviously San Francisco sitting at 66.6%. Is obviously much higher than Houston's 47.9%, but you also got to account for San Francisco having the 6th toughest schedule in the entire NFL. So critics are high on Brock Purdy having a bunch of these weapons and being surrounded by a bunch of superstars and this and that. And I'm not going to sit there and argue that because he does. He is surrounded by Hall of Famers and superstar NFL players in the 49ers offense. Kittle. And by Hall of Famer, I mean Kittle's going to be a Hall of Famer one day. I think Christian McCaffrey's probably already made his case to be a Hall of Famer, but you guys get the point. He is surrounded by superstars. I'm not going to say he's not, but at the end of the day, Brock Purdy still has to make the decisions, okay? He still has to make the decision of where he wants to go with the football. And on top of that, Brock Purdy also has to make the throws. He has to be accurate. So it's not just because he has these superstar weapons. Yeah, that's probably one of the bigger reasons why. But at the end of the day, you have to give credit where credit's due. And Jimmy Garoppolo was never this good passing the football in the 49ers offense. So clearly, Brock Purdy deserves his credit. And I think some people have been better about giving Brock Purdy credit. And then obviously, like when you look at the 49ers and, their struggles with not, I hear a lot of people talking about how Brock Purdy can't come back from a deficit leading into the fourth quarter because the 49ers have a pretty bad record when trailing in the fourth quarter. But at the end of the day, like I said, Brock Purdy has to still make the decisions. He still has to make the throws. And I think when you look at the eye test, it's clear that Brock Purdy can play football and he can be a quarterback in this league. And he's not a finished product. I think a lot of people think he is a finished product. Clearly he's not. This is his pretty much first full season starting in the entire NFL. And then obviously what he did last year, those last 8 games, he was deserving to get the starting job. It's kind of hard not to argue that he wasn't deserving of the starting job. So, and when you have a guy like Kyle Shanahan, who is an offensive mastermind and a guru, I'll be the first one to say I didn't necessarily agree with how the 49ers handled the Trey Lance situation, but it's funny because when you look at some of the situations Kyle Shanahan's been in his coaching career, if you look at the Washington Redskins decision to move on from Robert Griffin III, and then obviously take they took Kirk Cousins in the same draft they got Robert Griffin III. And it's funny because the guy that was drafted last, Kirk Cousins, or I guess behind Robert Griffin III, not last, but the guy that was drafted in the later rounds ended up working out better than the guy that was drafted with the first 2-3 picks. So I always like to compare it to that situation with Trey Lance. Like the Niners took Trey Lance at number 3, and then the guy that they got in the later rounds, specifically the last pick in the NFL draft that everybody kind of passed on more than once, including the 49ers, ended up being the guy moving forward. So it's crazy how Brock Purdy from here on out is going to make general managers really, really dissect film and study these quarterbacks coming out, because at the end of the day, you never know what quarterback could be great in the NFL, and you never know what quarterback could be bad in the NFL. And it seems like the trajectory over the last couple seasons is that unless your names like Joe Burrow or Trevor Lawrence or just the top guys, it seems like there's been more guys that have been drafted in later rounds that have worked out in the NFL and that are currently starting quarterbacks in the NFL than what there is, with higher draft picks in the NFL. So it's crazy to think about how the situation with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy has worked out. And then when you go back and look at the Redskins' decision to move on from Robert Griffin III and roll with Kirk Cousins, it's crazy to me how that works out, because the Trey Lance and Purdy situation is very, very, very similar to the Robert Griffin III and Kirk Cousins situation. And it's funny, too, because Kyle Shanahan is the guy that wanted Kirk Cousins. He had Kirk Cousins ranked back then when Kirk Cousins was coming into the NFL draft as the best quarterback coming out of the draft. And really, in all reality, I can't think of all the quarterbacks that were in that draft class, but when you look back at that, Kirk Cousins has had a great NFL career, very good NFL career. And it's funny, too, because that's why you always see Kirk Cousins rumors to the 49ers, and we're seeing that again this year, especially with Kirk Cousins' contract expiring. But that's why you always see Kirk Cousins rumors, to the 49ers. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think Brock Purdy's doing just fine, and I don't think Kirk Cousins is going to come in and play extremely better than what Brock Purdy's doing right now. That's a lateral move if the 49ers think it's smart to go out and grab Kirk Cousins next offseason. Again, that's highly unlikely to happen. 49ers are rolling with Brock Purdy, and that's what they need to do. They don't need to go out and get Kirk Cousins. It's a lateral move. Kirk Cousins, again, is not going to come in and play extremely better than Brock Purdy in this system. Brock Purdy is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, statistically ranked right now. Whether you guys think that or not, stats don't lie, and that's what it is. And obviously, like I said, there's going to be people talking about how he's surrounded by superstars and this and that. He's carried by Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, and McCaffrey. He still has to make the decisions. He still has to make the passes, and with him being the last pick in the draft, he is doing a very damn good job at doing that. But yeah, so it's just funny how that all works out. But then obviously, with Brock Purdy, like I said, being statistically ranked the best deep thrower of the football in the entire National Football League is absolutely mind-boggling to me. But he's played with his ass off, man. There's nothing bad to say about Brock Purdy. He did have that 3-game skid where he struggled, but the entire team struggled, and quarterbacks do struggle. You look at all the top quarterbacks in the NFL right now, every single one of them is struggling. Patrick Mahomes hasn't been the best. Clearly, we know those guys are proven and things of that nature, but at the end of the day, quarterbacks struggle. Brock Purdy had a massive bounce-back game against one of the better defenses in the league last week against Jacksonville. He has one bad game, people write him off. He has another good game, and then people say he's surrounded by superstars. He can't win, but real football fans know that Brock Purdy is a good NFL quarterback, and I think, again, I wasn't necessarily happy with the way the Niners handled the Trey Lance situation, but at the end of the day, man, like, how do you not give Brock Purdy the job after what he did last season? And I'm not going to lie, I was a fan of Trey Lance starting this year, I was, but clearly the 49ers wanted to go in a different direction. They thought as if Trey Lance was done. They didn't think he was. I think the whole situation with the Trey Lance, and I hate getting into this because it's history now, but the 49ers thought that Trey Lance was going to be a little more ready than what he really was, and they don't have time to develop a quarterback like that. Brock Purdy came in and he's ready to win now and play now, and he's doing that. So you can't, like, I don't mind them for doing that. Clearly it's worked out for them. But at the same time, knowing that, I just really wanted to see what Trey Lance could do. I didn't know, nobody knew whatever. The 49ers gave him an opportunity, and unfortunately he got hurt. And that gave Brock Purdy, the full go. Like, Brock Purdy got his chance, and he didn't look back. And I respect Brock Purdy for that. Tough quarterback, didn't sit out after he was concussed against the Vikings. I'm glad Brock Purdy is our quarterback. He's going to struggle again. But you have to take the good with the bad. I mean, at the end of the day, Brock Purdy is doing exactly what he needs to be doing, and he's doing it at a very high level. And you have to trust the coaching staff in that decision to move on from Trey Lance and to roll with Brock Purdy, because it's clearly worked out for them. And like I said, I wouldn't trade Brock Purdy. I wouldn't trade the decision to start Brock Purdy for anything else. Clearly, he deserved it. He's showing us this season why he did deserve it, and he's shutting a lot of the critics up. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that statistic, though, with Brock Purdy statistically leading the NFL in deep throws by a very large margin. So, again, that just kind of adds to the type of season Brock Purdy's having. I do think Brock Purdy is the real deal. I do think he, deserves to be an NFL quarterback, and he is proving that in every major quarterback category this year. And say what you want about him being surrounded by a bunch of talent, the guy can't win. Real football people know that he's a good quarterback, and he's doing exactly what he needs to do. Again, he is surrounded by superstars. But just because he's surrounded by superstars doesn't mean that he's still not a good NFL quarterback. He leads the league in a lot of these major NFL quarterback categories. So Brock Purdy will be fine. He's not even a finished product yet either. So sky's the limit for Brock Purdy in this 49ers offense, and I'm here for it.